This is a 1970 Chevelle, and this is a 350 with a 250 horsepower motor. Okay, to take the carburetor off, first we have to do is take the filter off. Here's the air cleaner. Here's the whole assembly. It also plugs into this hose right over here. This is your basic 2-barrel carburetor. You see it has 4 bolts. 1, 2. Has this vacuum line going over to the distributor. Okay. Here is the choke. Right here. There's the spring that lifts it up and down. When you see the choke, when you push on the accelerator, the choke closes. It'll open up as it warms up. And then there's the electrical connector here for the solenoid, and there's another bolt here, one on the back, one on the front, and here's your gas pedal cable, and you got a couple springs here. One goes to the coil, the other one goes to this lifting block up here and connects right there in the same spot. Well, 2 different spots, one for each spring. And of course, here's where the gasoline comes in. Okay, let's just start from the beginning here. So let's just take the gas line off. I try to take all the parts off, everything disconnected before I take the bolts off the carburetor. Okay, and this is the pipe that goes down to the fuel pump. I guess we can take the choke off. Get rod off, and don't lose this little clip. See, here's the choke spring down here, so when it gets warm it expands and opens the choke. Alright, there's just a solenoid cable. Here is the bolt that holds the gas pedal linkage. It just comes right off. I'll put this back on here. Here's the 2 springs. Here's the one that goes to the coil. Will go on the top hole. The one that goes to the bracket, the lifting bracket, the hose that goes to the back of the carburetor, that goes so this hose hooks to the back of the carburetor, so it goes to the valve cover. That's your PVC valve. That's your pollution device for 1970. Okay, with all the accessories off, we'll just take these 2 bolts off. Okay, that's 2, so that's one side. Well, let's start with the back one. That looks like it's easier. Okay, that's one. Now let's do the front one. But it's one of these hard places where you only get a quarter of a turn, so it just takes a little longer to get these off, but no big deal. Okay, here's the last nut. Finally. Jeez. Okay, with the last one off, here we go. Just lift this off nice and easy. Put this bracket off to the side. And here's one carburetor. There we go. And here's this plate. Okay, now this is a quadrijet. So it'd be, if this was a 4-barrel, then you could tell by a quadrijet because it's got the two small butterflies in the front, and when you really step on the gas, then these babies open up. But it sits in the same position. So if you had a 4-barrel, you'd only have 4 bolts here. You still have the linkage, the gas linkage. And on this side, you'd still have the choke mechanism. Of course, on this particular carburetor, it doesn't have the little things. It was taken off. So it would power the choke here. Here's your gas line coming in here. And that's all. It's basically the same thing. Here's your air screw adjustments here in the front. That's it. See, so that's the difference between a 2-barrel and a 4-barrel. Basically, remove them the same way. Today we're going to install the carburetor. The carburetor hasn't been on this car for a couple days, so I hope you have common sense if you do that to put a rag over here so nothing falls down here. And the reason why I did this, because many years ago a friend of mine did this and he dropped a bolt down here, or a nut, can't remember, and he couldn't get it out, so he ended up having to take off the intake manifold. So all you gotta do, it's not that hard. So the gasket is clean. The first thing we'll do is put this aluminum plate on. It's like a heat shield. I don't know what year they started doing this, but it didn't really work. What it was supposed to do is, let me put the carburetor on here. Just simple, just lay it on. And it's really hot in the summertime. The engine's really hot, so what happens is that the heat from the motor comes over here and bubbles the gas inside the bowl, and then it has vapor lock when it wants to start, so it was hard to start. So they thought if they put this plate on, it would stop that. I guess it slowed it down a little bit, but still. So, here, I'm going to take this back off. I'm just going to put a little oil on these studs to make it a little easier for me. You don't have to do this, but I do. Wipe everything off so it's nice and clean. And we'll reinstall it. Now we have 2 bolts on each side, or 2 nuts on each side. See, they go down a little easier. I'll put this one out. See, you put a little oil on them, and you could almost turn them all the way down by hand. And then we have 2 on this side. Do the back one first because that's the easiest. Okay. Now this one takes a little finger work. Get it in there. Come on. Okay. Okay, those 2 I was able to get with the socket. This first one, I'm not going to be that lucky. but since I have it almost all the way down by finger, it will not take too much of this. Alright, and then I'll tighten the last one in the back. Okay, the carburetor is on. Now let's see, the vacuum line in the back, I might as well just hook that right up. Alright, now we have, here is the linkage. So that goes all the way through, and here's the nut on the back side. That happens to be 7/16. The nuts on the carburetor were 1/2 inch. So just tighten that up. Okay, that works. It doesn't come back because we need the springs. So in this particular car, there are 2 springs. One hooks from the coil, and it goes on the top. If you can see that. Okay, so the top spring hooks onto the coil and hooks onto the top hole of the mechanism here. Now the other spring goes all the way back to that lifting mechanism, or not the lifting mechanism, lifting bracket. There, okay, around the bracket, come up here to the bottom part of the carburetor, so it pulls it back. Now we're going to put this choke on. Well, what I just did in the frame before, which I deleted, is this little clip here that goes through here and hooks on. I happened to drop it, and I was just so lucky that it fell all the way to the ground, because if it would have got stuck someplace in here, it would have taken me hours to find it. But, so, here's the mechanism. It just goes through here, and just clips on. So, the other part of the choke hooks on to this little spring right here. And that moves up and down, like this, moves up and down, and then it connects to the choke mechanism. So let me just put the little cover on. Just protects it, just keeps it stable. And then we come over here and put this through. Put the rod through and just clip it. So there you go. Choke mechanism's all taken care of. Here, let me pull this up here. And you can see how this rod just hooks to this spring. So what happens is, when the spring, well, when you first start the car, the choke automatically closes. As this gets warmer, it pulls the choke so it stays open. Okay, so there, so it just snapped right into place. See, now it's got full clearance, full everything. See, so now it works nice and clean. Okay, now we just needed the vacuum line that goes over to the distributor. See, it goes to the distributor, comes into the carburetor. Now the last thing is the gas line. Alright, I'm going to put it on, oh, I'm going to stop it because I want to put another piece of rubber on there. So I went out, got myself another gas hose. Since I'm taking it off, might as well just put a new one on here. I don't have any problems. I always put the clamps back on so I don't have to take them all the way apart. Put them back on. So let me tighten this one. This one might be a little bit harder, but that's okay. So I just work it back and forth. There we go. One of these days, I'm going to remember, I should have done it today, but I wasn't thinking about it, is put one of these inline filters. I like the old style ones with the glass bulb so you can see there's junk in there so you can just take it out. Okay, so what else we need to do here? Choke on, fuel, it's all hooked up. So the next thing, let's see if it starts. Warmed up. Now I can adjust the idle. It'll be this screw right here, and it's connected right to this lever arm. This is the linkage to go to the gas pedal, and here's the screw. So I just want to turn that down to be about 800. I can tell because I have a tachometer on the inside and tells me exactly how fast the motor's going. Okay, that'll be enough. Now if you had a real old style carburetor like this one here, it doesn't have this type of choke mechanism. It has a different style here, and what happened is I know I used to have this on my 57 Chevy, and I don't know when they stopped this, but a copper tube that went from here all the way down, and there was a hole inside the intake exhaust manifold, and that would send heat up to here, and then that would slowly open up the choke. So how will you adjust something like that? Is you take off these 3 screws. Well, I'm going to take them all off. You don't have to take them off if you're adjusting it, but see what happens, it's got the same type of mechanism with a spring, and as the spring warms up, it will move this lever. That lever will operate the choke here, but this carburetor is frozen up. It's pretty old, so it doesn't move. But anyway, how you would adjust something like this is that you'd put the cover on and you keep on turning this until it closes the choke, and that would be how you would set something real old like that. The last thing, I just want to mention this. Here's your PPC valve, and all you do is have to take it out and shake it. If you can hear it, it's okay. And that vents from the engine, and it just goes all the way back to the back of the carburetor. And then on the other side, just have this bent hose, and this just hooks right up to the air cleaner. So that is the amount of pollution devices that they have on this car. And 1971 they got radical because it reduced the horsepower on some of these engines by over 100 horsepower. And by, let's see, 73 it got really bad. Okay, so let me put the air cleaner on, and that should be the last thing. The air cleaner only fits one way because it's got a little notch. Fits right on the carburetor. Got that little hose. Alright, there it is. All done. So I took it for a ride, and it's not exactly what I wanted. So I am going to adjust this a little bit. Adjust the air screw right here. Okay, by pulling that, unscrewing it, cleaning it, the RPM went up. I turned down the idle back down to 800 because it went up to 1,000. So I think we'll try that. Leave it there at that setting.